ARO.NET is the let's say technology provided by Microsoft to help us get the ASP.NET web pages connected with the back-end solutions, whether they are SQL Server based or any other technology that provides us that works with us as a data store. We had some definitions related to the ADO and the ADO.NET. What is it doing and where to utilize it. We saw some libraries that they have that we have to utilize them, and we refer to them actually to accomplish the task of using the ADO.NET functions or functionalities. We saw that also we discussed that this ADO.NET has to be utilized in one of the two modes, either in a connected mode or in a disconnected mode. Those are two different architectures. Connected and disconnected does not mean that we are it's not disconnected by the sense of being disconnected, but there is a scenario via which we utilize those functionalities from the ADO.NET let's say platform or environment, which is you get connected, you utilize whatever you need, and then after you disconnect, just you release the channel. Since the ADO.NET is provided based on the usage of either a driver or a provider, as we discussed as the class, so this driver, or this provider, those are two different channels. We utilize them to get connected and to a data store from a front-end solution. We retrieve the data or we insert the data or whatever we want to do. Then after we disconnect, we release either the driver or the provider from being occupied. This channel would be released in the sense of if any other process wants to utilize the same channel, he will find it available. So thus we talk about being connected or disconnected. It's not being disconnected, as the word disconnect means you cannot have, say, you cannot reach the destination. No, it is the way how you utilize the ADO.NET technology to reach and to submit, either to reach seeking for information or to submit information. What are the scenarios? Connected means actually you are occupying. Connected architecture means you are occupying either the driver or the provider once for all, from the beginning of the application, from the startup of the application until the end. We discussed the life cycle of the web application or the ASP.NET application at the unit number 1. Since the start of the application, the connectivity, whatever the channel utilized, either the provider or the driver, would be actually in action and occupied, reserved to the application until the destroyal of the, let's say, application contents from the memory. Means you release, the application has been released and the space has been released. That time, the connection would be disconnected. This is in the connected mode. In the disconnected mode, no. Once a control is triggered, an event has been fired, thus we have to connect the control or the interface or the respective component from the web page to the data store in the background, either seeking for information or submitting information. Once the thing has been done, everything has to be actually released. To do so, actually, the respective namespace, or let's say library or class responsible for giving us the chance to utilize the back-end resources in a disconnected mode, is the DataSet. We saw those libraries here. There is something else actually, which is the DataSet, that helps us to reach the resources in background, but in a disconnected architecture, based on a disconnected architecture, which is nominated the DataSet. It holds a group of functions. We can classify it as a class. It holds a group of functions, but we utilize them to fulfill the disconnected mode work. I asked you at the beginning of this class actually one question, which is how many interfaces we have and how we get connected actually to the back end from a front end ASP.NET solution to the data store, whether it is SQL Server or whatever, a back end solution. So the front end solutions, they are actually web based mainly, whether they are actually built with the ASP or not. but mainly we talk about the ASP because it is an ASP.NET platform to deal with the .NET platform Ado, and then after the SQL Server if it is Microsoft, but we can deal with other data stores. Here in the front end, we might find different solutions that might utilize the .NET, the Ado.NET to get connected to a backend. Example, consoles. Actually, we do not create an ASP.NET web solution. We create, for example, a C# console application. We just write C# code. We do not need to create a new web page. Immediately we open a file in C# and you immediately write the code. Yes, we can do that. And it might utilize the Ado.NET to get connected to the back-end solutions. So different solutions in front end, if they are compatible to utilize the Ado.NET technology, thus they are actually genuine to utilize those group of functionalities. The layer here, what we see in between here, this medium, this intermediate layer here, it is a group of Ado.NET, let's say, classes and functions that we have to refer to in order to fulfill the connectivity from front end to the back end and vice versa, from back end to the front end. Front end, remember, web pages, example. Back end, database, example. Actually, as per the example we are following is the SQL Server. Yet others also, they are genuine and they are compatible to be utilized too. The number of arrows here, actually, it is intentional set here. Why? Because each of the solutions we can find as a data store in backend has to have its dedicated library with its dedicated also functionalities inside that we have to utilize to fulfill either the insert or the retrieval. Whenever we say insert, means there have to be actually a management inside. So SQL Server deals with the SQL client, Oracle deals with the Oracle client, OLEDB deals with the OLEDB, ODBC deals with ODBC. Those are libraries, those are library namespaces actually, that we have to, yes, namespaces that we have to refer to each for a dedicated function or whatever. Functions, what would be actually, what do I mean by functions? What I mean actually is the, how to send a query, how to retrieve, to send a query to retrieve data and so on, whatever we need, it is a function that we have to find its respective carrier. Any questions here? Any questions here? I hope it's clear. I hope it's clear. In addition to those libraries, actually, that they are respectively utilized to specifically connect to a specific data store in the back end, we find those also namespaces. They are actually dedicated to different architectures. As per the data set here, we just define that it is the respective namespace for the disconnected architecture. What does it mean? It means actually if we want to just refer to build a front-end solution with different .NET controls, and we are going to get connected to the back-end solution, while we need to make the application much more faster with less time to consume and less resources to consume. Resources, for example, we say either the driver or the provider, in addition to the memory to utilize. So the dataset is a solution for us. So the dataset is the architecture we follow. Or the others, they are different namespaces, but for the connected architectures. We have either a connected architecture, different namespaces, or we have a disconnected architecture in single also. We use this dataset. We refer to this dataset namespace. Whether in disconnected or in a connected mode, actually dealing with the back-end solutions, we have different techniques or a variety of techniques, via which we start with the description of the direct data access. This is a methodology via which we interrogate the data store directly, means we do not need any technology to facilitate or to enhance the work of the front-end solution to make the application more fast or something like that, to consume less resources. No. In this context, we deal with presenting the application face-to-face with the back-end solution. When I say front-end and back-end, I believe that it is clear with you. So if you have any questions in this regard, you just interrogate immediately. I'm using the words frequently and continuously. So if you have any questions in this regard, you just interrupt me. I said this methodology here, it helps us to, it is to be utilized when the application is required to communicate directly for a reason or another, face-to-face with the data store. What does it mean? Are we going to neglect the Adobe.NET technology? No, we are not. We are not going to do that. Yet, we are going to have a direct channel that provider, the driver, would run immediately the query from the front-end control, let's say front-end application, where the control has been, where a control has been triggered or fired, straightforward to the data store. Whether we are going to do an insert or whatever, any function we are willing to do, whatever, as per the examples given here, the communication would be done directly from the control to the data store, to the entity inside the database, for example, to the table inside the database. Direct data access. We will not use the technologies that they enhance the work of the ASP.NET web pages. Caching, avoiding the round trips, whatever. We are not going to refer to that. We are not going to use a local computer resource memory, local memory, to refer to, for example, we are going to answer a question or a request to retrieve data. No, we are not going to do that. If we are going to do an insert, for example, it cannot be done to a local, actually, we saw that we can utilize objects, or let's say instances, locally set, locally stored, and then after that, there will be actually a mechanism via which to update the back-end resource. Here now, in the direct data access, DDA, we are not going to utilize the local resources, but straightforward to the back-end data store. DataSet is our friend, is our, let's say, carrier, which we are going to utilize, from which we are going to utilize the respective functions or whatever. I'm saying functions briefly because I do not want to deal with the definitions of the contents of the dataset for now. If we are dealing with if we are dealing with the retrieval of data, there are 4 steps we have to go after. Mainly the architecture, it is drawn over 4 steps, clearly seen here. We have to set up a connectivity to the data store, execute the whatever respective function to retrieve the information. Then after we display it in the interface at the same point, at the same level. We have to actually populate one object before the display of the front-end interface, which is the ASP. We have the object ready, still at the same second page. See what I'm saying? After populating, we have the thing ready. Then after we terminate the connectivity that we started at the first step, at the end, we display a rendered interface to the end user. 4th step. These are the case of retrieval. These are the case of retrieval. Means we are searching resources, searching information from backend. Select the query simply. 4 steps. Yet, when we talk about the insert, for example, update, deletion, things that they have to be happening in the back end without a mandatory task to happen at the front end interface, except alerts or just notifiers. We need only 2 steps. It's very simple here because we do not need, actually, if you, for example, are going to make an insert, mainly we do not have to do, it is not a mandatory task to notify the end user, but we can give alerts to clarify the work or to make the thing more clear. No more, no less. It's not for the purpose of the run of the service, no, but for clarification purposes only. Thus, the main functionality, they are rectified into two steps: the connectivity as usual, and then after the execution of the command. Full stop. To notify the end user, to notify or to give any hint, this is not mandatory for the run of the service. Remember that. A graph that illustrates exactly what we were discussing so far, the direct data access. Whether we are talking about a retrieval of data, we have 4 steps that we have to go through. An object has to be created. This object has to be actually created after a connection, absolutely true. Then after a population to happen means let's say the object that we are going to create from the instance has to be actually filled with the data required, because you are retrieving what? The data or the information, whatever the resource. So here happens the population. Then after the rendering, let's say the rendering of the object that has to be actually visualized in the ASP.NET interface has to be rendered, has to be actually seen and set in a shape that the ASP.NET can display to an end user. Here we say that the rendering happens. We just forwarded immediately to the front end solution, whatever, to the ASP.NET web page. 4 steps. A case of insert or update or delete, connectivity, execute the command, full stop. The thing would happen internally, nothing to be retrieved back or nothing to be alerted back. This is the basic functionality, and this is also for the retrieval. It is the basic functionality because you can do other control tasks. Depends. Any questions? Continue. Creating a connection, or just starting whether it is for a retrieval or for an insert. The connectivity has to have a syntax, since we are dealing with the ASP.NET. And earlier this unit we discussed that the connectivity has to happen either based on the usage of a provider or a driver. We have actually a standard, let's say, syntax to establish a connection. We are going for the actually for simply discussing the syntax of just establishing or creating a connectivity to the back end. We are going to create an object from the connection function. Any questions? Gadir, are you here? I'm feeling that you are not with me, but even though I called you and I marked you absent, and so far you are not, regardless. Let me come back. Yeah, sir, I said that we create an object from a function. This is not a function, this is a class. Be with me, please. We create an object from this class, which is a connection responsible, let's say, class, or connectivity responsible class. An object we give it a user-defined name. We write whatever we want here. I may write Oman, I may write Nizwa, I may write whatever I want. It's a user-defined name, but later on, whenever we admit this name, later on we use it the same way. So it's just a convention. It's a context of a convention, yeah. And this is actually the constructor that has to follow the functionalities from this class. That has to initiate the status of this class, which is the connection itself. This connection has to have some parameters to follow, which is mainly the server, the dedicated server, which server is going to give us the connection. Usually we talk about the local, since the execution would be in the local server locally, so we are going to refer to the local server. The database actually, would have actually a name. We're going to connect to the data store. What is the data store? It's a database mainly, or whatever. But for now, we talk about database. We can have a name. Actually, this is the name to be specified for the database means, is it a keyword? No, it is not. From where we get it, it would be given to you. For example, we have a database named Oman DB or Oman, let's say, Manpower, whatever. Any name given to you to interrogate. So this is not a keyword. Then after, if we're going to specify a security feature to specify who is going to access or to utilize such a resource, the SSPI, the security support provider interface. Those are the main, let's say, brief parameters we may pass to the connectivity string. Explaining the same components which I was explaining just briefly here. I will not lose a lot of time here. The data source indicates actually where as I told you, we're going to execute the connectivity of the local service, so the source would be actually locally set, which is the local host. The keyword, it's a keyword. The local host is a keyword here. This one, you cannot apply at that. We can replace it. We can replace it with other things, but basically it would work fine. Why? Because an execution of a connection, or just the declaration and initialization of a connection string, would be done in the same server where the resource is. So the keyword would be successful. Other than that, it depends on the scenario. But because of what I'm saying now, the declaration and initialization of the connection string would happen where the data store is. So the keyword localhost indicates that we are referring to a locally set data store. When it tells to us that it is sufficient, means that this is not a unique word that we use everywhere and anytime. No. But for the case of what I explained to you, that we are declaring and initializing the connection string locally at the same place or the same, let's say, server environment where the resource is. Whatever the name of the database, so as I told you, the name it would be given to you actually based on the request or whatever. It's the name of the database, the name of the object you are, the resource. Sorry, the name of the resource you are willing to access. The SSPI actually is the security support that we are going to either to specify or not. Here, if we specify, means we are going to authenticate users face to the database. Otherwise, nothing will be mentioned. Means any candidate or any application that would use the connection string would have or would be awarded an access to the resource. Other than that, we may force the access to the resource using an ID and a password. And who is going to control those credentials here, the ID and the password, is the SSPI, which is the security support. So at the end, in conclusion, connection string would identify to us where the resource is, the resource itself, and then after the security to measure if we are going to authenticate users or not. Here actually it is a context of environment, means let's use or not let's use the security perspective. It is a question of your project or your environment, whatever. Connection strings, actually, when we deal with the direct data access, there is a time frame that has to be actually followed by each environment, which is set by default to 15 seconds to let the connection actually alive during this period of time. In the sense of, if you are just running an application and you are not doing neither any retrieval or an insert or an update, no functions, no communication with the back end, the communication, the connection string would be actually alive for 15 seconds. This is by default. This is the period of time that the Adobe.NET, let's say, preserves to you to maintain the two interfaces. The interface from the front end solution, the ASP.NET, the SPX ASP.NET solutions to the Adobe.NET, and the second interface from the Adobe.NET to the back-end solutions. This connectivity actually would be actually a life of 15 seconds unless you modify that. And that means you control this timeout, this connection timeout. This is an attribute. The connection timeout is an attribute. In the sense of, it is a property to specify. It is not a definition. It's not a description. It's an attribute, like we define the data store, like we define the SSPI, like we define the initial catalog, the name of the data store. The connection timeout is an attribute that we might also utilize to help the connection string, where it is, to help the connection string to be alive for a certain period of time. For example, you want to maintain the connection string alive for, let's say, 3 minutes, even at error states. What does it mean? Means if we get an error for a reason or another, where it is, if we get an error in output for a reason or another, the system has to maintain the connectivity alive, for example, for 3 minutes or 1 hour or 1 minute, or just immediately we will break it down 0 seconds. So we can control the connection string to be alive for this X time. But by default, if you do not integrate this attribute, by default the system, who is the system? The Adobe.NET will maintain this connection string alive for 15 seconds, and then after it will terminate. Means any request that comes after it has to be reinitialized again. It has to be reinitialized again the connection string. Connection strings, actually, they are either to be, as we discussed the syntax here, to be integrated inside. Our solution is in C#, inside the C# interfaces, or we may store it for a while. But here we have to integrate at every and each single C# interface, every and each single C# page. We need a new page. Page for registration, we have to use the connection string. Page for login, we have to use the connection string on top of the page. Page for search, we have to use the connection string again. Page for, let's say, display, again, connection string, and so on. Whenever we need to deal or to communicate with the backend, we have to initialize the connection string again and again and again. There is no harm. You have two statements like we see here. Those two statements here, statement 1 and statement 2, we just utilize them at every beginning of every interface where we need the communication with the back-end solution to happen. Other than that, we have another proposal. Other than that, we defined in the first unit the web.config solutions. We said that a project might have one or more than one web.config or configuration files. What does those web.config do? We said that it is a management to the website. It might have different controls. Amongst the managements and the controls we talk about here, they are here in this example, to set a connection string public and available for all entities, the front-end entities, to be utilized again and again, without rewriting the code again and again at the beginning of each page. We don't. We just call the connection string, or sorry, the configuration variable or attribute by name. We have a connection string here, tag, to be defined, and this tag holds the connection string data, the name of the database, the resource location, if you are utilizing the security or not. We have the same syntax, but written a little bit differently because we are writing XML-like, HTML-like, because we are using here, see, the less than, greater than. It is actually the web.config, as per the definition we saw in unit number 1, it is an XML file. So thus we are integrating we are initializing, we are declaring and initializing the connection string in an XML environment. So we have to use it this way. later on we are going to rewrite it again. No. You just refer to this tag here, connection string. Here it is, this name here. Connection string, actually, it's a name of, it's an environment variable. What does mean environment variable? Means actually, if you utilize, it's a global variable. You can utilize wherever you go inside the application, since the web.config is linked to that environment. You cannot create a project 1 where you have a web config and another project 2 use the same web config from the project 1. No. So it has to be with the same project, let's say. It has to be actually related to the same project. Any questions, please? To reach such created connection string here in the XML, we have a syntax that we have to respect. Here, actually, this string, actually, it is the connection string variable, as I told you, is the same. This is the one. It has to be utilized as a string because actually it is defined to us what? It is defined to us the resource, no? It's a string at the end of the day. It is defined to us this string. It is the connection string that we defined earlier. Yes. So we refer to the name only this way. We refer to the name only this way. And this connection string actually would be defined through the web configuration manager. Actually, we actually utilize and define through this is actually it's a manager that we can utilize to reach the call of the connection string from the web.config file. What is pubs? Is the name of the database. So we're going to establish the connection string from the web.config file using the web configuration manager. Syntax of connectivity has been set. We declared, we initialized, and we know now two ways of doing so. Either using the two statements inside the C# page or referring to the web.config file to create a global variable, connection string. Done. We had our connection, let's say, initialized. Let's start implementing. Let's start using the connectivity. We have to open it. We have to open it. So the connection string we created earlier, we have to open it. Connection is available. The resource is available. The connection is available. Yes. Where to use it? Where it is? Yes. Connection is available. We have to use it. No, we have to use it. So to use it, we have to indicate that it is open in an open state. Then after the open, we do whatever we want. Actually, we do whatever we want: insert, retrieve, update, delete, whatever management we do with the backend solution. Later on, we close the connectivity the same way. The same variable declared, utilize or declare the connectivity we use to open the connection, and the same variable we used to close the connection. We open, we manage, we close. 3 steps. I'm going slowly. I'm going slowly. Be aware of. This is just a notice, it's not a warning. No. Just I'm telling that you have to be aware of what we are seeing now. It's not a context of warning. No, I'm stressing on this point. I'm giving you stress on this point only. Retrieving data in the context of retrieving data, we need some, let's say, preferences. the command that would actually execute the retrieve, which is the select, the SQL select. Select star from, select name from, select whatever. The query, the SQL query. The object that would execute this statement, the SQL query, is not compatible with the ASPX. والعكس صحيح, and the vice versa is correct. ASPX is not object or control, they are not compatible with the SQL statement. There have to be an object to execute the SQL statement, either an input or an output, to send it or to retrieve and the select or whatever. There have to be an object. Either in connected mode or let's say direct data access, DataReader or DataSet objects would be actually utilized to retrieve the records. Connected mode means continuously, DataReader, or let's say disconnected mode, we utilize actually the resource for our need, and then after we disconnect, we use the DataSet.
Victor, excuse me.
Yes, tell me.
Can I go because I have midterm now?
Okay, yes, I'm finishing now. خلاص. Who is speaking? Iman.
Yes, دكتور.
وين كنتي انت؟ وين كنتي؟ انا مسجل غياب اصلا انت.
كنت اجهز اللابتوب وكذا لانه عندي اختبار الحين الساعة 9.
Okay, just let me take the attendance again, please. Just let me take the attendance again and we go. لحظة.